All right, yes, I'm algorithmically using my son James for views. I promise at the end of this video, if you want to watch him playing with bubbles, that'll come at the end if you can bear with me. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk about what I think is the biggest change that I have seen or we will see in Google Ads ever is coming around the corner. So I'll put myself up here and we'll go with it. So some of you might know they're calling it SGE. Which stands for Search Generative Experience. And so you watch the video on their page, people have seen it. It's coming. If you have the little test tube experience, you can see it. But I wanted to kind of go off it a little bit and why I think both Google investors should potentially be worried. So again, I'm trying to combine both my advertising and digital marketing background with direct-to-consumer e-commerce and e-commerce retailers with some of my passion around following investing circles here, but so I'm going to reach that in, but you can see SGE, Google SGE, the search generative experience is coming. The search volume is picking up, and I'm quite confident it's only going to keep climbing from here. But what does it mean? What is coming that is going to change a lot of stuff? So some of you might know this company. They bought a Super Bowl commercial called Temu. I think it's owned by a parent company called Pinduoduo. It's essentially a version of AliExpress, although it's not owned by them. It's separate. But we can see here, you just search the name Temu, their own name alone. They make it very easy to kind of click this generative experience, and then it will bring in reviews. So I do think this element of perception of truth, this idea of your digital reputation, as far as what you are in terms of 3.4 stars on 679 site Jabber reviews, like reviews are going to be much closer. So I think it is much more important that both websites that are selling products as well as companies that sell services should be really trying to figure out ways in which how can we have a real quality experience for our customers where they want to come back and work with us. So I think this is coming. I think it's going to change a lot of businesses. It's something we need to be on the forefront of, because I do think this is the reason why I kind of have gone down this spiral, and where it comes back to is actually this conversation on LinkedIn, or it's not a conversation. I made a long comment. Google has been desperate for a long time in many ways. I use the word desperation in terms of they're doing things that are whether. I've been doing this for 9.5 years at Exclusive Concepts, and I think 2 or 3 years before that, when I graduated in 2009, I kind of fell into this in 2010, buying Google Ads for the first time for a glow-in-the-dark golf company. And back then, I mean, you saw the word ad was bold in yellow or green, or really stood out in some way, and they've gone more and more, the word ad, in terms of specifying what is an ad versus what is an ad, has gone more and more blurred. The EU has sued for, I think, $3 billion plus, them prioritizing Google Shopping ads and results. So there's been a lot of change over the years, but a lot of what they're doing now is kind of a little bit more desperation. So this post got me going, and I have a long rundown here of my response to kind of what I view as these kind of cheap wins. And as an investor, I view it as Google, the S-curve of the amount of people adopting smartphones has slowed down. The amount of searches somebody does in a day has slowed down, or picked up and slowed down. So the only way for them to increase the average revenue per user or average revenue per search is to deprecate and make a greater percentage of the queries result in an ad, and organic results continue to get pulled down. So where this comes down to, so again, this is an example where if you have Google reps, you know that they've been really pushing for the auto-apply recommendations, some of which are valuable, some of which are not even relevant enough to say that is a store that has physical locations, and they're still kind of pushing that anyway. But again, so those are humans doing that level of pushing. I think we're seeing algorithmically in the actual, or not algorithmically, in the user experience side of Google Ads, you're going to see things like this where by default, things are going to be opted in. Suggested ads are automatically applied to your campaign after 7 days. So the auto applies, I think we're going to see more and more of the auto applies be just default applies if you don't toggle things off in setup. Again, I'm talking about less users in terms of less more people getting smartphones. I think we're also going to see less, we have seen for a long time, they don't reveal this number in terms of actual new advertisers that spend more than $1,000 a month in Google Ads. I'm sure there was a big kind of S-curve buildup from early days of smartphone adoption and Google Ads over the last 10 plus years. I'm sure the last 5 years it's trailed off. Maybe you saw a spike in COVID from that, but it has continued to die down. But I think where Google is really should be afraid, and probably is, even though they have more data than anyone. So maybe in the end, this all is some game plan where they were trying to show how we are not. But I think there's always been this curiosity I've had. Some people have known this agreement between Apple and Google, that Google essentially, I think it's a revenue share essentially, as far as the ads that get clicked on iPhones get sent back to Apple. And they essentially kind of pay to just make sure that Google search is something you still default to keep in your mind. And I've always wondered, like, why doesn't Apple just make their own search experience? Even if it's not as good, they have the distribution. And I'm starting to wonder now if they've been kind of waiting for this kind of seminal moment. I hear my Google speakers talking to me, waiting for this seminal moment where large language models, Siri can be infused with a large language model, and you can talk to your iPhone. It's going to be the default search on Safari, on web, on the MacBook, on your iPhone, and then Google's really in trouble. So it's not just simply things of, as I was having some examples here of, this is not a financial advice, this is not financial advice. Google has done things where the organic results, I mean, these are a newer ad format in the last 2 years or so, where you can kind of get Google screened and you pay a cost for these cost per lead. Look at the amount of white space between ads until you finally get to the organic one. And then you have quick answers, which obviously there is some element of that being useful for the user, but it goes further down and then there's a lot of white space. And there's more quick answers within the product. So position 4, wherever you were in position 4, is now, I mean, the odds of getting to position 4 has gone down dramatically, whether it's just because of laziness of scrolling or whether because there's actually things that are interesting above it. But the value of being in higher positions has gone down. And so they're continuing to push things that are above the fold and click-through rates, so that average revenue per search, which they don't specify, goes up because of advertising. But as we're getting closer to this point of where we're going with experiences, like, again, this one like from Temu here, and I'll zoom it in, like, again, the ad placements are going to be scattered throughout, and so I put a similar result of, like, hope it didn't restart on me, yeah, so Bing's going to do a similar thing of, like, here is financial planner books. I was trying to kind of force one to appear, and you're going to see ads that are appearing there. I'll be curious what these click-throughs are. They do have the word ads, showing that it is an ad, but these will be in the Bing side of ChatGPT infused chat, so you or in Bing, you click on the chat function, you can kind of see that. So again, it's coming from both angles. I just think being ready as a marketer is going to be important. I think being ready as a retailer or any company, honestly, because I think I'd be curious to take your company name, search it into this, and see how often Google is suggesting you read reviews about your company now. So I think companies are going to have to be more accountable. I think we have to do more to try to get those positive experiences to be visible in a digital format, so that the ways in which they're scraping things like SiteJabber and Trustpilot and other places like that are essentially what's going to be bubbled to the top. I think it's Glassdoor or other formats like that. So again, where this plays into the Google breakdown in terms of, again, not financial plan or not financial advice. Again, I still have a large Google position, but I'm continuing to kind of trim that a little bit. And I mean, the company in mind I've been buying is NVIDIA, but I also think I need to figure out how much I should be allocated towards an Apple position. I had one in the past, but don't at present. But so again, playing into this, because what happens next after Google's done all these kind of low-hanging fruit things, these kind of cheap wins to kind of force clicks to advertising. What happens next? So this is just a breakdown, and this is Shopify's, which I can do one in the future on this, but this is a breakdown of Google's revenue over the years. I mean, this goes back to 2019 by quarter, and it's broken down into the revenue segments. This is a tool called Main Street Data. I've interacted with the owner, because there was another similar tool that was used, and they got acquired by Public.com, and we're able to access it as easily. So he made a kind of, honestly, it's already a better tool here. But this big blue area is their main search revenue. And then you can see this next part is their YouTube ads revenue, which is on a Performance Max campaign, very much becoming more and more a percentage of YouTube ad spend is PMax ad spend. And then you have network member revenue, so that's Google Display Network revenue. So that's the ads that are appearing on throughout. If you're on Forbes.com and you're seeing an ad there, it's probably Google Display Network ads. And then here is cloud. Cloud is growing, but cloud is a small percentage, and at present I believe it's not profitable for them. They're still scaling it up as opposed to AWS, which is kind of churning good cash flow for Amazon. Honestly, the rest of the business looks, some people would rather just buy AWS alone. And then the other revenue being it's other, so it is Android related. So there is also the App Store that is actual selling of devices, is my understanding. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of these parts. And hedging is these kind of very small. You see a very small sliver there. And then they have these things called other bets. I don't know if that's included within like the wing delivery, where you're getting delivered your groceries via what's it called? Via drone delivery and internet balloons and things like that. But basically, this is their business. And if this goes down or contracts, which a spoiler alert here, when I remove these other pieces and leave only what is here, you do see year-over-year revenue that is up by 40.36. And if you look in your account, I bet there's a pretty good chance your cost per click has gone up by over that percentage. So that means that the clicks on Google have gone down year over year. And so, again, it's kind of been happening for a bit here, but I just don't know how much that part of the S-curve sloping off in terms of what ends up being revenue per user or revenue per search. So Google's going to continue to find more and more ways in which how do we get advertisers to be competitive, whether that's, people call it a black box. I think his name is Tony Zara. He talks about remnant placements is what Google had shopping, which is a valuable placement. We want to stuff everything in the box. I would say if I were to kind of take Google's side a little bit of how Performance Max campaigns can work well, if you have a creative strategy, if you actually have an understanding of what your brand is good at, why somebody should buy from you as a retailer or someone else, if you're a direct-to-consumer brand, what does your product bring to delight in somebody's life where they're glad they exchanged money for your product? How can that live in your advertising? That is where the opportunity is. That is where Google wants you to do it. So again, whether you're running an ad for, you have a, what do I have in front of me here? My son's Tubby Todd. It is a moisturizer for babies. If you searched moisturizer for babies, there's going to be ads that are going to apply. There's obviously, you have to consider the lifetime value of a product like this. I know I've had to buy it a couple times now myself. So there's lifetime value. So usually clients are thinking in the mindset of return on ad spend. How much am I paying to acquire a customer? And that is a factor of how much the clicks cost, how often do they convert, how big is the order value size when they do convert. There's a fourth dimension there, which is lifetime value. You can consider it a fifth time of how much of those people that are buying are advocating for you. So kind of viewing this as a cycle. As an organization at Exclusive Concepts, are kind of doing this as a lifetime value cycle, a virtuous activity cycle where you acquire and you convert customers, but you hope they become advocates and they become loyal advocates that can speak to your brand. So that loyalty, those reviews end up living on your search result page at present. And again, there's going to be more and more of these language models are going to boil your brand down very quickly. What you are in terms of what your digital reputation is going to be boiled down into very small data chunks. Things like this Temu review, which again, Temu is, if you've seen the ads, they're selling like Nintendo Switches every day, 20 of them for $20, and then it stops. So these kind of spammy type ad tactics, which got them 3.4 stars, and they actually had an earnings report that jumped them up a little bit, but I would not be bidding on Temu in the long run here for them, what they're doing. So again, this amount of what is your reputation online is going to continue to be important. So this is an effort for me to work on my reputation digitally and kind of show my knowledge in the space, because this is coming. If you search machine learning AI jobs at Apple, they have whole landing pages about this. If you look at the job postings, they have 100 plus AI and machine learning systems engineers, and it just kind of goes 109 results. So if you don't think Apple is going to jump in headfirst in there, I think you're just lying to yourself thinking, does that mean they do this on their own and stay friendly with Google forever? Or are they going to jump in there and grab a piece of this pie? So if you made it this far, thank you. If you think this was useful, I know this was 13 minutes. I probably could have boiled it down more, but this is really the future of the digital world. And this is the battle for who controls the answers you see. So this is both interesting to me in my job, but also interesting in terms of me as a parent. How do I use this technology to inform my son? So we'll come back to him. I used him here, the bubbles. Like how do I use this tool to inform him around this stuff? So I mean, it's an interesting time we find ourselves, and it is going to be a pretty world. Again, I don't even know what the world's going to be like 2 or 3 months from now in some of these tools. Say anything about what it's going to be like in 20 or 30 years when he's looking for a job. Yes, we're planning for his college, but it is how he's going to learn is going to be so different than the way that I learned, and it's just a very interesting time. So if you found this interesting, I'd really appreciate the like, comment. I did want to, I don't know if I brought it up, I want to make sure I do before that. The brain really got turned on by this, somebody I've connected with from an online community here, Adrian, that he uses alternate data. He's actually a whole tool around it. And he talked about there's a cryptocurrency that does kind of GPU rendering, and he also talks about Apple. That really got my mind going in terms of piecing some of this together. So again, I just, it seems pretty clear to me, but I want to be tested. I want to be challenged. The algorithm wants you to probably disagree with me. That if you disagree with me, we'll probably have more engagement in there. So it's not just I have to kind of show pictures of James forever. And he's like, why did you do that, Dad? In the future. So we'll see what happens here. But thank you guys. And yeah, stay curious out there. It's interesting.